My guest today is Amy Cardoso, tour and docent program administrator for the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth. So the Modern recently opened a new exhibit, Sean Scully, The Shape of Ideas. Tell us about it, Amy.
Yeah, so this exhibition really looks at 5 decades of Sean Scully's work, and I will say it doesn't include everything. Scully also is a sculptor, he's done photographs, but this show really focuses on Scully's evolution of the stripe and kind of traces that and looks at how he's kind of looking at its expressive qualities, but also just other potential there. But it really focuses on that, so it's mostly paintings and works on paper in this exhibition.
Okay, let's check it out.
So in this first gallery, we see a lot of Scully's earlier paintings. A lot of these were made when he received a fellowship at Harvard in 1972. So a lot of these works were created then, but also after. And he's really playing with this idea of the grid. So he's applying tape, spray paint, and paint to the canvas in horizontal and vertical stripes, as well as diagonal stripes. And so he talks about these paintings as computer paintings before there were computers. And it's this work really kind of talks about or shows this idea that will continue on with Scully of a painting within a painting. And this work is called Inset Number Two. It's from 1973. And so we do see this pattern, this really kind of, this one is almost kind of lattice-like pattern that is really representative of his works of this time. So, moving into 1980, Scully has fully embraced oil paint at this point. Previously, he was working in acrylic and spray paint, but he found that he was able to get more depth of color and more expressive qualities in the mark making within the stripes. And also by this time, he's actually making these by hand without the aid of tape. And so you can see that here, it's a little bit more loose on some of these stripes. And this work, it actually started out as panels 2 through 5, so these 5 panels. And it was a direct homage to Picasso's 3 musicians. And he looked at it, and then he decided, well, I'm gonna add this on here. I'm gonna add this on here. And he kept adding to it and adding to it. And so he kind of got rid of this idea of a fully composed image and really embraced this kind of improvised image instead. And we also see here that he's transitioned into working on separate panels individually and then joining them together. This work is 12 panels that are juxtaposed side by side. And this piece is called Backs and Fronts. Sean Scully has talked about it as people standing in line. And here too, we see Scully referencing art history. Scully is a big lover of art history, and literature. And we'll see that thread continue in his other works based on titles, but also kind of making works in response to certain poems. So a little bit after Backs and Fronts, he was awarded a summer residency in New York in Montauk, and it was actually out of a barn. It was a summer art residency. And while he was there, he was picking up basically found pieces of wood on the ground or stacked in the barn. And he was really playing with the textures and the colors and the widths of the canvases and just kind of adding things together and kind of really experimenting here. So while he was doing that, during the week and the weekends, he would drive to a studio in New York and he was working on this painting, which is called Heart of Darkness. And this is from 1982. And it initially started off as these first 2 panels over here. Once again, started off as one thing, becoming another thing. But this work obviously references the work by Joseph Conrad, the novel Heart of Darkness. And when Scully kind of reflects on that story, he recalls that Conrad writes that the heart of the 20th century is black. And so I think that's too, we see that these first 2 panels of this triptych are kind of darker, they're more muted. And so we're seeing him become a lot more comfortable in utilizing the material of oil. Sean Scully's Wall of Light series started from a series of watercolors that he did in Mexico in 1984, where he was looking at the light play off massive stones, I believe in the Yucatan. But he let it sit with him, he let it gestate with him for many years, because the series didn't start until 1998. And in this series, we see kind of bands of color. We see these horizontal and vertical blocks of color. Scully calls them bricks. So, in a way, we are looking at a wall of stone. And in this work in particular, it's called Wall of Light, Desert Night from 1999. And, here, this is referencing a trip that he took. He drove through the Nevada desert at night. And so he's seeing these colors. He's seeing the sand. He's seeing maybe the shadows from, rocks on the side of the road. So he's keeping these colors in his mind, these tans, these kind of gray blues, these blue blacks, and he's going back into his studio and making this work. A lot of these works in this series are based on a specific memory or a sensation or a location. The paint, sometimes it doesn't end up looking like paint anymore. It almost looks like stucco or the side of a building. So he's kind of playing with this idea, especially with the scale also, that they're really kind of architectural and really wall-like in nature. So the Landline series stems from a series of photographs that Scully took in 1999 off a cliff in Norfolk of the land, the sea, and the sky. And a landline refers to the line where the land or the sea meets the sky. And it's kind of this always changing point of reference. It's never quite the same. And so these started in 2012, partly because Scully suffered a pretty severe back injury, and he found that it was easier to paint horizontally than it was to paint vertically, but also because Scully needed time to kind of sit with this idea, to let it gestate before creating the work. And these are primarily created on aluminum, and we can actually see here, you can see the aluminum peeking through, and the reflective quality of this this background, this material, really lends itself well to seeing the fluidity of the paint. And in this series too, we're seeing a little bit more expressive brushstrokes here. While it is kind of more of the minimal works that he's creating, we are seeing a lot more expressive qualities in the mark making itself. And these, for Scully, they aren't just about form and color. They're not kind of formal like that. They're still his dialogue with the world and kind of how he's looking at his memories and his locations and his sensation around him.
Well, Amy, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for this tour. And remind folks what days the Modern is open.
So the Modern's open Tuesday through Sunday. We're open from 10 to 5. On Fridays, we are open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and we are free on Fridays.
Okay, cool. And this runs through October
10th.
October 10th.
Yep.
Okay. So stop by, check out this show. Amy, again, it's been a real delight. You know the topic very well, and it's been fun just learning about Sean Scully. So, folks, come on out to see Sean Scully, The Shape of Ideas.